Thank you, Bryce. I've never been accused of not being able to be heard, so I hope that I'll be able to compete with the traffic this morning. Like Bryce said, my name is Cindy Brown, and I'm a Catholic woman who opposes the HHS mandate requiring all employers to provide free contraceptives, sterilization, and abortion-inducing drugs through their health plans, even in violation of their consciences. As a Catholic woman and as an American, I am free to believe as I do, and as the Catholic Church teaches, that contraception, sterilization, and abortion are intrinsically evil. Therefore, it follows that we believe that providing for and or paying for the means to obtain such services is a material cooperation in that evil, and being forced to do so is a violation of our consciences. This is the consistent teaching of the Catholic Church for 2 millennia. To say that all of a sudden the Catholic Church and I, as a Catholic woman who hold to such beliefs, are engaged in or are taking part in a war on women is absurd. I categorically reject any such suggestion or accusation. I say that the real war on women is when the President of the United States and the HHS Secretary insult all women by expecting all women to think and believe in mindless conformity as they believe. I say to them both, I will not comply. Today is the 223rd anniversary of the day our founding father, James Madison, introduced his proposed amendments to the Constitution. These 10 amendments became known as the Bill of Rights because all our freedoms that our founding fathers and Americans held to be inalienable rights. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson said that these inalienable rights are endowed by their Creator, meaning that inalienable rights do not come from the government. They come from God. Since American government is based upon the concept that all human beings are born with certain inalienable rights or freedoms, the First Amendment guards these rights by prohibiting the government from denying citizens their rights. The government does not give us our inalienable rights. The government's role is to safeguard the rights that we already have. Amen. The First Amendment affirms the freedom of the individual. Here, today, we are exercising our First Amendment rights of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly. Clearly, threats to religious freedom are a threat to other First Amendment rights, as we so demonstrate here today. The First Amendment affirms that we as individuals have freedom of conscience. Religious liberty or freedom of conscience protects the beliefs of everyone. In addition, the First Amendment protects minority viewpoints and helps us to understand that limiting the rights of some people may eventually limit the rights of everybody. Also in this discussion, my dear brothers and sisters, beware of the term freedom of worship. This term is being used by many governmental officials. Freedom of worship is not freedom of religion. Timothy Cardinal Dolan, President of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, publicly stated on March the 3rd that the First Amendment protects freedom of religion to practice one's faith without interference from the government, not worship in China, where believers can go to church but cannot practice their faith the rest of the week. 2 months ago, mainly in response to the HHS mandate, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops released a statement on religious liberty entitled "Our First Most Cherished Liberty." In that statement, the bishops state the following. Now, as I quote the bishop's statement on religious freedom, please understand that any emphasis that I may add to the words of the bishops is purely my own. But I am quoting straight from their document. And I quote, the bishops say the following: "We are Catholics, we are Americans. We are proud to be both. To be Catholic and American should mean not having to choose one over the other. Our allegiances are distinct, but they need not be contradictory and instead be complementary." That is the teaching of our Catholic faith. That is the vision of our founding and our Constitution, which guarantees citizens of all religious faiths the right to contribute to our common life together. Catholics in America have discharged this duty of guarding freedom admirably for many generations. We have been staunch defenders of religious liberty in the past. We have a solemn duty to discharge that duty today. And the bishops say to us, we need therefore to speak frankly with each other when our freedoms are threatened. Now is such a time.
Yes. Yes.
End quote. The bishops then continued in their statement on religious freedom with the same reminder and warning that Cardinal Dolan previously had given. And I quote again directly from the bishop's document. Religious liberty is more than freedom of worship. Religious liberty is not only about our ability to go to Mass on Sunday or pray the rosary inside our homes. It is about whether we can make our contribution to the common good of all Americans. Without religious liberty properly understood, all Americans suffer. What is at stake is whether America will continue to have a free, creative, and robust civil society, or whether the state alone will determine who gets to contribute to the common good and how they get to do it. Religious believers are part of American civil society. All these Americans make their contribution to our common life, and they do not need the permission of the government to do so. I continue to quote, restrictions on religious liberty are an attack on civil society and the American genius for voluntary associations. This is not a Catholic issue. This is not a Jewish issue. This is not an Orthodox, Mormon, or Muslim issue. This is an American issue.
That's right.
End quote. The bishops then continue in their statement by reminding all of us of our American history by stating the following.
Excuse me.
Our nation's founders embraced freedom of religion as an essential condition of a free and democratic society. James Madison, often called the father of the Constitution, described conscience as the most sacred of all property. George Washington wrote that the establishment of civil and religious liberty was the motive that induced me to the field of battle. Thomas Jefferson assured the Catholic Ursuline sisters in Louisiana, who served a mostly non-Catholic population by running a hospital, an orphanage, and schools, that the principles of the Constitution were a sure guarantee that their ministry would be free to govern itself without interference from the civil authority. In his famous letter from the Birmingham jail in 1963, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. boldly said, "The goal of America is freedom. He rooted his legal and constitutional arguments about justice in the long Christian tradition. And I quote Reverend King. He wrote, "I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all."
Exactly.
To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. End quote. The bishops then continue with a very serious wake-up call for all of us. And again, I'm quoting from their document. "It is a sobering thing to contemplate our government enacting an unjust law. An unjust law cannot be obeyed. In the face of an unjust law, an accommodation is not to be sought, especially by resorting to equivocal words and deceptive practices. If we face today the prospect of unjust laws, then Catholics in America, in solidarity with our fellow citizens, must have the courage not to obey them." That was straight from the bishops. The bishops then say no American desires it, no Catholic welcomes it. The bishops tell us, but if it should fall upon us, we must discharge it as a duty of citizenship and an obligation of faith. They continue and they repeat the words of St. Augustine and Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. The bishops said, "An unjust law is no law at all. It cannot be obeyed, and therefore one does not seek relief from it, but rather its repeal." The bishops then say, "The Christian Church does not ask for special treatment, simply the right of religious freedom for all citizens. What we ask is nothing more than that our God-given right to religious liberty be respected. We ask nothing less than that the Constitution and laws of the United States, which recognize this right, be respected." End quote. And in conclusion, and I'm almost done.
Your microphone is not working.
I know. The bishops then address our lawmakers in Congress. And this is what the bishops say to all of our lawmakers. "We address a particular word to those holding public office. It is your noble task to govern for the common good. It does not serve the common good to treat the good works of religious believers as a threat to our common life. To the contrary, they are essential to its proper functioning. It is also your task to protect and defend those fundamental liberties guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. This ought not be a partisan issue. The Constitution is not for Democrats, or Republicans, or Independents, or Libertarians. It is for all of us. And a great nonpartisan effort should be led by our elected representatives to ensure that it remains so." End quote. Obviously, I cannot say it any better than the bishops, but I can say it loud. So I ask you, brothers and sisters, to visit the bishop's website and other websites that are out there. But if you want to read this entire statement from the USCCB, go to usccb.org. There's also a link that you can contact your senators and representatives and give your input on what you feel about the HHS mandate. Remember that the public comment period ends June 19th. Thank you, and may God save our country.